I recently did a painting using my Permanent Patch 101 to create texture. It was of cliffs overlooking an ocean, and I was really happy with that. I've also used this permanent patch before in a highly textured cat painting, and I'm finding that it works really nicely. This time around I would like to do an abstract today, more of an abstract with the feeling of the ocean, and I'll use the same permanent patch. It's Sure Stick Permanent Patch 101, which is a flexible patching and caulking compound. It's like a mixture between plaster and caulk, which means that it does have flexibility, which is good for if you're using a gallery wrapped type or stretched canvas, because there is flexibility to the canvas. I know some artists use hard plaster and they find that that works well too, but I like the flexibility in this particular patch. And I'm going to be using acrylic paints and various tools. I bought this at Home Depot a while back along with this spatula. I'm not sure if I'll be using it or not. I have a toothbrush here. I have various palette knives. I have this brush, which is nice for if I use it dry when the paint is not quite dried yet. I can soften up edges and things. So we'll see what all I end up using. I'm not totally sure yet what I'm going to be doing with the painting, but I've already painted the sides. It's not quite dry yet, but I painted the sides with a mixture of Payne's gray and white because I wanted them finished off in some way, and I wanted it to match somehow the front of the painting. So to get started, I will put I call this my texture. It's actually the permanent patch. There are two ways to do this. I can either put it on my plate that I use for mixing paints and then mix my paint right into it, or I can put it down first and then come back and paint over it. And I think I'm going to maybe do a little bit of both today. Now this gives a little different type of a finish, and so when you're all finished, if you don't want differences in gloss, then you may want to come back and add either a resin coat over it or a spray-on finish of some sort. Now this is meant to be painted over, so you don't want to just put it down and then just leave it. Now I can let that dry, or I can go ahead and start adding paints to it, and I think I'm going to start mixing some paints right into it. So I will cover up the permanent patch. I'm going to go turn the air on because it's about 116 outside today. Yeah, I'm just kind of playing around here, but I just want to see what different textures I can get. I kind of like that little ridge there, so I'll leave that. It's starting to dry already. So I better start putting some paint into that. So I may be covering up some of my old texture because I'm dragging it out now, but that's okay too. I really like the texture that I get with this. I didn't want to wait for it to dry, so I could let this dry and then go paint over it. Like I said, I could take different types of brushes that would get down into all of those grooves and things, but I'm kind of finding as I go along here I don't want to do that. So I've already changed up my plan. I have phthalo blue here as well. I really like the Payne's Gray. The Payne's Gray, if you've seen my other videos, I use it a lot because it is not as harsh as black. And this is phthalo blue. This is Prussian blue, which is a very deep, very pretty blue. It's beautiful with water. And this is the Payne's Gray. So this is Prussian here. It's just beautiful, I think. This is Payne's Gray, which gives almost kind of a black, but not quite so dark. And this is phthalo blue, which is much lighter, and as you pull it into the white, it really becomes much brighter. I have to work quickly today because this is really a hot day, like I said, and it's really dry. We haven't had much of a monsoon yet this year. So I use whatever tools I have. You can find a lot of fun tools right around your house. And I'm also kind of paying attention to the overall composition here. Making sure that there is some balance and that kind of has the mood that I'm looking for. I think as I'm doing this, I'm thinking about having some bit more yellows and things down in here, but we'll see what I feel like. Things never actually come out just the way I think they're going to. This is a lot of the texture there, so I need to decide if I want to come back later and hit that or do it now. I think I'll go ahead and hit it now. It's starting to dry on me. So as you play with different tools, you'll see that they all have their own effects that are quite interesting, and I like all of them. I don't ever want my eye to just go to one spot, so I'm always looking for things like that. So I think now I'm going to start bringing in some other colors around this way. I think this is going to be sort of the feeling of a beach with some earth around it, maybe some rocks. We'll see what happens as we go. Now I'll start some of my other colors here. The white helps, the white paint helps spread the other colors that I'm using. I really like that burnt umber in there. And if I pick up a little bit of Payne's gray or something here as well, that works fine. I tend to just dip my finger in one color and then another. Grab a little white to make sure that it blends nicely. And see, the one just kind of runs right into another then. I feel like I need to toss in a little something else. I can do that as well. And the finger paint part is different than the palette knife, and so you want to make sure that that the whole thing blends okay together and that there isn't an area that doesn't really connect. That doesn't mean they all have, the whole painting has to be the same. I like to change things up quite a bit, but and there with the blue and the alizarin crimson, it kind of gives it this purpley color, which is kind of pretty. And I can go over this whole thing, like I was saying earlier, with a coating when I'm finished, and I'll probably do that. That way, if there's some place that's just the medium, it's okay. And I'm sure it doesn't hurt any if it's not painted, but just to make sure that it's all coated nicely. And to protect my piece, I think that I will coat it with resin. Now, I haven't used this brush at all. This would be if I say I wanted to soften up an edge down here. But it's drying so fast that I'm not really able to do that anyway. There's not even any paint on here. And finger painting kind of does the same effect. And I think that I kind of got in the habit of finger painting just because it is so hot here. I'm getting some nice colors by doing it this way. I've tried laying down texture first and then painting over that. That's the way I did with my textured cat. And then I mixed the medium, I call it medium, it's wall patch. I tried mixing the wall patch directly with the paint. That's what I did with my cliffs painting, and I liked that really well too. And then I also went over some areas in that painting to add detail, like the little flowers and grasses and things on the landscape, on the land itself. And I'm finding that all of these different ways work fine. You can also throw in white heavy body paint, and that works very nicely too, to give you that texture. Part of it is the texture that I laid down first. It's drying quickly, and so then when I come back later and I try to smear the paint into it, it doesn't want to do it because it's already dry. I think that's what's happening here. But that's okay. I can still touch it up. I think it almost works better to mix the texture in with the paint. If you live in an area like I do that is very, very dry and hot, even with the air on in here, it's just not letting me have time to work like I'd like to. I'm practicing different techniques because I would like to make some large pieces. And I want to know what really is my favorite method before I get going on a real large piece. So as I'm doing this, I'm kind of thinking about the overall composition with color. I have a little dab of yellow up here, which brings the eye around. A little touch of yellow here doesn't grab your eye as that this is yellow. Wouldn't have to have yellow up there, but I think it just sort of reflects down through here. I'm not sure about right in there though. I'm not totally happy with that little spot, so I think I'll play around with that. And it's important to have some maybe either a wet cloth or something when you're working with this, because that way you have something to wipe your hands off on. I kind of like that better. I don't want little white spots in there either. It's really interesting here what's happened with when I put the paint down on top, and then as the wall patch is drying underneath it, it pulls apart a little bit and leaves little gaps in the paint. I kind of like that though. But again, that's why you have to play around and experiment. It kind of adds to the texture. It's really kind of interesting. Next time is put an undercoat of my Payne's gray so that I don't have canvas areas showing through anywhere to worry about, or an extra layer of gesso. That helps too. And then mix my paints with the wall patch. But I am really happy with this though. It's just that I'm having to work with it a little bit more, and then of course being that it is so hot and dry today, that's not helping any. So now I need to bring in some more of my burnt umber. I don't want this to be too dark up here though. I don't know. So here's a little bit of white and brown. Now, I'm trying to stay out of the way of my camera here so that you can see what I'm doing, but it's a little hard for me then to see what I'm doing. Could use there's a little hint of, it almost looks green down here where I've mixed the yellow where it hit the blue. So I think I ended up not using my phthalo green. So I don't really want to bring that in, but I could add a little bit of yellow and blue in up here. Bring in just a little hint of green up at that end. I kind of balanced that out nicely, and there's almost a hint of it right there where I patched up that area. And I like this yellow. It's Liquitex Heavy Body. I featured that in my cliff painting. So I'll take a little bit of the yellow and a little bit of the blue here, kind of mix that up a little bit. Just bring in a tiny dab of that greenish. It's kind of pretty. I've been playing around with acrylic pours recently, and this kind of, some of this effect kind of reminds me of that. Down through here, I think. So this kind of coming to the time where I'm just making sure that everything is balanced and happy with the composition. may have just a little bit of blue come into that, which means maybe my Prussian blue, just a little dab of the Prussian blue running through some brown maybe would be good. I'm taking some Prussian blue, some white, and it's kind of bringing that into that area. Yeah, I kind of like that. It kind of finishes off that corner, I think. And I never just have one color. I have the brown with the gold and a tiny little touch of blue in it. Can run right over my yellow, but leave the yellow. Yeah, this is quite pretty. Another thing that you can do when you're working with a lot of texture like this, if you go to a large painting, it's probably best to use a birch cradleboard. What that means is instead of the flexible canvas, you have a panel that is a hard surface, and it has birch wood or something on the edges of it. This is wood behind here on a small square, and canvas is wrapped around it and stapled on the back, and it's stretched. A good quality one would have stretching bars behind it and things. But even so, when you start getting, if you got real large, I think you would want a panel that would support the weight of the texture. Now this is not plaster though. This is just, it's just like caulk, so I think I could go fairly large and not worry about it. But I'm really happy with that. Thank you for watching.